even though you were being truthful with everything you said, you could say factually correct statements. You see this all the time with people who are interviewers in the political scene, where they'll say, yeah, but why were you hanging out with that lady?
To where people's identity from a young age is now being centered on politics, and it has to do with the fact that they came into it at a time where it was a vacuum, and you had to feel strongly this way or this way for this guy or not for this guy, that it broke people's brains. That old Joe Rogan line, he says Donald Trump broke people. He either broke them against them or for them. And it changed the way we looked at the context of politics itself. So instead of, to bring this back and land the plane, instead of people getting into politics for the concept of being informed and wanting to get into politics, they got into it for reasons of being emotional to try to prevent the opposite of what their favorite figure was up against. And so when I look at science now, I could see a very similar pattern forming where, let's say, just for the sake of argument, Terrence is really wrong about 9 out of 10 things. Maybe that 10th thing he's really onto something, and that's pretty cool, and I like that. And in a perfect world, I'd be like, this is great. But in our mass society, he has now created this bomb that went off that, again, he doesn't control how people respond to him, but institutions responded to him the way they did, such that now a lot of people are coming into the scientific process and being interested in it under the guise of, we got to fight back against the man who's keeping this man down. And so the scientific method itself, which is supposed to be objective, has now been changed. I think that could end up being a problem, and I'm not saying that's his fault.
That's right, I agree. Could be.
How do you prevent that, though? Because as human beings, we are tribal. Like, it's what we do. Throughout human history, we're always tribal. We're tribal around some sort of cause. Even if a cause didn't start as something that was supposed to be a cause, it becomes a cause, and then people have to take up arms for it.
This world is a miracle. Just this table is a miracle.
I know. Me and Danny Jones built it. It was a miracle.
These lights are a miracle. These curtains are a miracle, man. Just think about how much went into the lights. And there's an electric system, and people had to invent fluorescent tubes. These are fluorescent? They look whatever.
I forget, but
doesn't matter.
We got a fancy computer
if
system.
If they're LED, that's even better. Yeah. That's even more advanced. It's absolutely... Sometimes I have to stop myself, because if you just think about it, you can drop to your knees and not do anything about how unlikely and marvelous this all is. By the way, the hermeneutics of beauty would say beauty isn't the same as just happiness being given to you in a soft manner, like Da Vinci's paintings or something akin to that. But beauty is more, the way that the ancients meant it, is more akin to the sublime. So there's this term called fear of God. Fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Fear of God, you're like, as a modern person, no, let's go back to that root. What did it mean? It meant respect. Okay, great. Let's say respect for God. I don't want to fear God. Why would you fear God? There's an article called The Dark Side of the Sublime, which talks about threat-based awe. If you experience awe, if you have a respect for what's immense and majestic, there's an intimidating quality to it. So for instance, a cyclone. You find that awesome. You find it awe-inspiring. And it's daunting at the same time. So if something was truly beautiful, truly sublime, it's not just you're smiling and grinning and laughing. You also have some fear. Neuropsychologically, there is if you feel awe in its utmost, there's a non-trivial amount of threat, of fear inside as well. So the reason I was saying that was because, yeah, I think one of my reasons for not dropping down to my knees, it would be too much. But the point is that there is some gratitude that we have to have. There's some gratitude. So it's just so unlikely that all of this works. Just look at this man. Like, look, holy moly. Holy moly. What we've done as people. Holy moly. And we have Uber. I always thought when I was younger, rich to me would be being able to take a taxi anywhere, because there were just no Uber at that point, and being able to eat at a restaurant whenever I wanted to. And now I can have a restaurant come to me, and it doesn't have to be a local restaurant. And now I could take an Uber at any point I want. I still cringe when there's surge prices and so on. But the point is, like, and I'm still ungrateful. Like, I'm an ungrateful person.
Why do you say that?
Well, that's a deep question. Why?
Yeah.
I don't know why. But
you just said it. You seem, because for the last 150 seconds, you seemed like a pretty grateful kind of person. You were appreciating my curtains.
I could see how much more grateful I could be. Yeah. Yeah. There's 3,000 years ago, or no, 3,000 BCE or BC, whatever you want to say, is when the first city was founded, the first major civilization in Sumeria. You used to look at people and fear that they're going to rape you and take from you and pillage and plunder. And now we just walk down the street. There's hundreds, it's thousands of people. You go to Times Square, you're not afraid. Some people may feel afraid, but it's nothing like thousands of years ago.
You're not running from a grizzly bear when you wake up at 9 a.m. Yeah.
So there's this unrequested and undeserved grace that we have. And an acknowledgement of that can go far. There's a reason why many of the more secular ways of doing meditation start with gratitude journal, whatever your feelings are on that and my feelings are on that. It doesn't matter. The point is that that's associated with a union and integration and not misgivings and dismissiveness. So you're asking, what is the solution to our tribal nature?
Mm-hmm.
It's in part gratitude. It's in part the analog and appreciating it. So the other three forms of truth, which people can look up, the 4 P's of knowledge is what Vervaeke calls it, but it's also the 4 P's of truth. So one more time, propositional are statements. Perspectival is the perspective you have. Procedural is actual, like you could fumble the ball. You weren't truthful to the ball. You can play baseball correctly and work on your truth, your procedural truth.
I don't want to get you off your thought here, but my only question for that kind of thing though is, truth is supposed to be, in the perfect world of being able to define things, the opposite of false or maybe lying or something like that. How can you inject truth to effort that makes a mistake that's in the right place? Meaning, if I swung at a pitch and missed, unless I was throwing money on the game or something like that and trying to throw the game, it's not because I was untruthful that I missed. Maybe I'm reading into this too much, but like, I just missed. It's a human error.
Well, sin, you hear the word sin. Sin technically means to miss your bullseye. The etymological roots, you can look that up. Sin means to miss the mark, to not aim correctly. And so you stray from the path. People say you stray from the path. You could say I did so unintentionally. You could say I wasn't doing what's consequential because it's easier to, that's another route that people can take. You have to look up the etymology of it though.
All right, so do sin etymology. Let's try that. That's a new one.
E-T-Y.
I don't think we've ever searched something like that before. I like it.
E-T-Y.
Yeah. Yep, that one. Okay, so it says origin, Old English, sin, sing. Wait, you just lost it. I just had it.
Let's go to a website about it.
Wait, sin, singen, and then Latin, sons, sunt.
Yeah, don't look at that. Just look at a website where they analyze it.
Do we have a good link right there?
What's the first link?
It's just the Merriam-Webster.
Keep scrolling. There's a website just on etymology.
Do you know what it's called?
It should you search sin meaning, you should search sin etymology.
So I went back to it.
In the Old Testament, the
To
word
fail,
for
to miss the
sin
goal.
is kata, meaning to fail or to miss the goal. What is the goal? The answer comes on page 1 of the Bible, which says, we are all made in the image of God. Every human is a sacred being who represents the Creator and is worthy of respect.
So, for instance, if you were deceitful in this conversation or trying to manipulate,
Yeah.
that would be a form of being false.
Correct.
Even though you were being truthful with everything you said, you could actually you could say factually correct statements. You see this all the time with people who are interviewers in the political scene, where they'll say, "Yeah, but why were you hanging out with that lady?" Okay, that's a truthful question. That person did hang out with that lady. But what were you doing at 7 a.m.? Why did you not go home to your wife?
The connotation of it.
Yes, they have an angle that
Yeah.
they're trying to expose.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think, we can get a little lost in, how do I want to say this? I will observe people now, usually online at this point, because that's the best place to do it, because that can include people who you don't know personally, but you can follow everything they do, like thought leaders, so to speak, stuff like that on Twitter, Instagram, wherever it is. But I will constantly, over time, find myself, maybe this is like only child people watching syndrome, but I'll find myself wondering how a person gets to this point, right? Maybe when I found them and started following them, they were here, but now they're here. I'm not even talking politically or anything. I'm just saying how they're thinking about given issue X. And
are you comfortable giving an example?
Yes. It'll be a little bit political, but Jordan Peterson. So I think and I have a lot of respect for Jordan Peterson. I think Twitter's really bad for him. I do think that. I'm pretty sure I don't follow him on Twitter. Like, that's on purpose. But Jordan,
there's a complete disconnect between how he portrays himself in a video, or he says what he says his values are, and then what he tweets.
Yes, I would agree. Jordan Peterson, when he came up, it was over, well, you're a University of Toronto guy, right? I'm pretty sure he was at the same place, right? Okay. Were you there when that was all going on?
No.
You weren't. Okay. So he comes up at a time where, I'm going to way oversimplify this, but it had to do with being forced to use pronouns, argument, and stuff like that they were looking at doing legislation in Canada over this. And he, I would say correctly, truthfully, if you might say, put out there going, stop, wait a minute, this is the line. And he's like, I know where this goes. I know when you start legalizing how people can say things, that is totalitarian type shit. Would agree. And so obviously he goes on Joe Rogan and he goes very viral, not just for that, but then people find out like all his life studies and the things that he's been even putting on YouTube by that point and stuff, and how smart he was thinking about the psychology of humanity, to oversimplify it for a second, that he then blew up and suddenly he was this, he was a views machine for everyone. So everyone who decided, oh, I don't like him because he's coming out against this legislation and that's not woke enough for me. And say the news media were like, yeah, let's get him in here and let's do what? Let's be deceptive interviewers with him, to which he usually schooled all those people. But Jordan Peterson, I think, remains a really smart guy. Is he a very imperfect guy? Yes, so am I. We all are, right? I don't judge people on one or two things they do wrong or stuff like that. My issue, though, is when you look at his Twitter, which goes behind a keyboard now, and you look at how he goes out, he has now been attacked for so long that he eventually moved towards becoming, in some small ways, the very things that he probably wasn't at the beginning, that his enemies untruthfully called him, that he then took on those characteristics, at the very least on Twitter. And so I will see him tweet something like, for example, this one hit close to home. He tweeted about Hoboken recently. This was maybe 6 months ago. He subtweeted a tweet from the AP that said, I don't know if we can pull this up, Alessi, but it was a story, I believe, from the AP that said Hoboken changed its pedestrian laws, and X number of years later, they've had no deaths. Meaning, like, it was a pretty successful thing. Like, the streets of Hoboken are so safe to walk on. I walk on them all the time. Sometimes I'm in awe of it because, like, it's a small town, but like it's very populous, right? It's a big place in that way. And so obviously like that's a win for whoever put that in. But Jordan Peterson had to like scream and say he slammed, here it is, Jordan Peterson slams woke report on traffic deaths decreasing. So Jordan Peterson hit back at a woke report that simply explained that there had been no traffic deaths in 7 years. Over the weekend, AP reported on street parking in Hoboken, New Jersey, quote, not a single automobile occupant, bicyclist, or pedestrian has died in a traffic crash since January 2017, elevating Hoboken as a national model for roadway safety, they wrote. The success comes after they removed parking spaces near intersections following the death of an elderly woman in 2017. In turn, Peterson quote tweeted the article, writing, you have become pathetic beyond comprehension at AP, and the woke death will soon visit you. And it's like, I'm trying to imagine Peterson saying that in real life if we brought that up in the context of a conversation, and I still genuinely, maybe it's because I'm a fan of him, don't think he would. But on Twitter at least, it is changing the way his brain works on things, and I have watched him move in that direction over the years because of the impetus of attacks coming his way. So I don't dignify those attacks. I think they're wrong. But people, we are all conscious of that. We are all capable of that, I should say. Like, we can move towards becoming the very thing that someone screams at us. I scream at you, you suck. You suck. You're an asshole. You're a horrible guy, Curt. I scream that over and over and over again. Eventually, you may tell me to go fuck myself just on the daily. And maybe that does make you an asshole because you start doing it to everyone else because you're so pissed off at what's happened.
Right.
So I'm trying to remember where I gave the example of watching people move. Why was I bringing this up, though, again? What was the beginning of that?
I think you were trying to explain why. You were trying to explain. You were asking for an example of like, hey, what's an example that is that you can describe where you're being pushed to a truth. Mm-hmm. And then I think it moves you in the opposite way to some degree. It sounded like that's where you were going at.
Yeah, I wish I knew.
Well, anyhow, the point...
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.